Nathan Hale had long forgotten what it felt like to expect company. The widowed rancher lived several miles outside the small Wyoming town of Red Creek, where the endless prairie stretched toward distant Blue Mountains. His ranch was modest but well kept, a weathered log house with a sturdy barn, a corral full of horses, and fields that demanded more hours than any one man should give. Every sunrise found Nathan already working, and every sunset ended with tired hands and an even wearier heart. 5 years had passed since fever had taken his wife, Eleanor. Time had softened the sharpest edges of grief, but it had never filled the emptiness she left behind. Nathan no longer cried when he saw her favorite rocking chair on the porch or passed the little flower garden she had planted. Instead, he simply carried the ache with him like another tool on his belt. He wasn't completely alone. After Eleanor's younger sister died during childbirth, Nathan had become guardian to 6-year-old Lily, a bright-eyed little girl with golden curls and endless questions. She had filled the house with small footsteps and cheerful laughter, but even she understood that Uncle Nathan rarely smiled. She never stopped trying. One crisp October morning, Lily skipped beside him as he repaired a broken section of fence. "Do you think Aunt Eleanor liked autumn?" she asked. Nathan hammered another nail into the wooden post before answering. "She loved it. Because of the leaves?" He nodded. "She said every tree looked like it was wearing its Sunday clothes." Lily giggled. "I like that." Nathan couldn't help the faint smile that crossed his face. So did she. It disappeared almost as quickly as it had come. Life moved forward whether a man was ready or not. By midday, dark clouds rolled across the Wyoming sky, swallowing the sunshine. The wind picked up sharply, bending the tall prairie grass until it rippled like waves on the sea. Nathan glanced toward the horizon. Storms coming. He asked Mrs. Dawson, an elderly widow who often watched Lily during busy afternoons, to keep the little girl inside while he checked the northern pasture for wandering cattle. He saddled Ranger, his trusted chestnut horse, and rode into the growing wind. The prairie felt different before a storm. Birdsong disappeared. Even the cattle grew restless. Nathan had almost reached the old creek crossing when he noticed something unusual. A wagon stood tilted beside the muddy trail, one wheel snapped clean in half. Nearby, a frightened gray horse struggled against tangled harness straps. Nathan urged Ranger forward. "Easy." As he approached, he saw movement beneath the wagon's canvas cover. A young woman stepped into view. She couldn't have been older than 24. Rain-darkened chestnut hair had escaped beneath her bonnet, and mud stained the hem of her plain blue dress. She looked exhausted, yet there was remarkable calm in her eyes despite the worsening weather. She raised one hand politely. "Sir." Nathan dismounted immediately. "Anyone hurt?" She shook her head. "No, thankfully." He examined the broken wheel. "You won't be going anywhere today." "I suspected as much." There wasn't the slightest trace of panic in her voice. Instead, she gently stroked the nervous horse's neck until the animal stopped trembling. Nathan noticed how naturally she soothed it. Most travelers would have been crying by now. She simply worked. "My name is Clara Bennett," she said. "Nathan Hale." She smiled warmly. "Thank you for stopping." He gave a short nod. No sense leaving someone stranded in weather like this. Thunder rumbled across the valley. Large drops of rain began falling. Nathan looked toward the sky. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before this turns ugly." Clara glanced at the wagon. "My luggage can stay." "It'll have to." Without hesitation, Nathan untied spare rope from his saddle and secured the damaged wagon as best he could before leading Clara's horse behind Ranger. "We'll come back after the storm." She picked up only one small leather satchel. Nathan found that curious. Most travelers carried their lives in trunks. She carried almost nothing. As they rode toward the ranch, rain poured across the plains. The wind whipped Clara's dress, but she never complained. Halfway home they passed a frightened calf trapped in a shallow ditch filling rapidly with water. Nathan started to ride past. "We need to hurry." Clara looked back. "The calf will drown." Nathan frowned. "It isn't ours." "I know." Before he could stop her, Clara slipped from the horse into ankle-deep mud. Together they struggled against the frightened animal until they managed to pull it onto solid ground. The calf bounded away toward its herd. Clara laughed softly, wiping rain from her face. "Now we can go." Nathan stared at her for a moment. Most people protected themselves first. She had risked being caught in the storm to save an animal that belonged to someone else. By the time they reached the ranch, both were soaked. Mrs. Dawson hurried from the porch. "Heavens, Nathan!" Lily peeked around the doorway. Her blue eyes grew wide. "Oh!" She wasn't staring at Nathan. She was staring at Clara. The young woman removed her bonnet and smiled. "Hello." Lily smiled back immediately. "You're pretty." Mrs. Dawson looked embarrassed. "Lily." "What?" the little girl whispered. "She is." Clara laughed, not the practiced laugh of someone seeking attention, but a genuine one that seemed to brighten the gray afternoon. Nathan noticed something then. Not simply that Clara was beautiful. Anyone with eyes could see that. It was the kindness behind her smile that caught people off guard. She thanked Mrs. Dawson for dry clothes, apologized for bringing mud into the house, and insisted on helping prepare supper even after spending hours in the storm. As evening settled over the ranch, Nathan watched her quietly from the doorway of the kitchen. She moved with quiet confidence, speaking gently to Lily, treating Mrs. Dawson with respect, and asking for nothing in return. He had seen beautiful women before. Beauty often drew admiration. Sometimes envy. Sometimes trouble. Looking at Clara, he sighed almost to himself. "You're going to break a lot of hearts." She paused, meeting his eyes across the warm kitchen. For a moment, sadness flickered behind her gentle smile. Then she answered so softly that only Nathan could hear. "I only wanted to mend yours." The word settled into the silent room like the first ray of sunlight after a long winter, though Nathan did not yet realize they would change the course of his life forever. The days following the storm passed quietly at Nathan Hale's ranch, but something inside the old house had changed. Before Clara Bennett arrived, the place had been filled with silence. Not the peaceful kind that came after a long day of work, but the heavy silence of a home that had forgotten how to laugh. Nathan had grown used to it. He believed that after losing Eleanor, this was simply how life was supposed to be. But Clara brought something different. She didn't force happiness into the house. She didn't try to replace the woman Nathan had lost. Instead, she slowly brought warmth back into the corners that grief had claimed. The first morning after the storm, Nathan woke before sunrise as he always did. He expected to find the kitchen empty and cold. Instead, he smelled fresh bread. He stopped at the doorway. Clara stood beside the stove, her sleeves rolled up, preparing breakfast while Lily sat at the table watching her with excitement. "Morning," Clara said with a smile. Nathan looked around. "You didn't have to do that." Clara shrugged. "I was awake. You're a guest here." She placed a plate on the table. "Then consider it a guest's way of saying thank you." Nathan wanted to argue, but he didn't know how. He sat down silently. The first bite reminded him of something he hadn't felt in years. Home. That thought bothered him. He pushed it away. Clara was only passing through. At least, that was what he told himself. Over the next few weeks, Clara became a familiar presence at the ranch. She repaired torn curtains, organized the pantry, helped Lily with her reading, and even convinced Nathan to replace broken furniture he had ignored for years. "You've been living like a man waiting for winter to end," she told him one afternoon. Nathan looked up from repairing a saddle. "What's wrong with that?" Winter isn't the problem. She looked toward the empty fields. You just forgot spring exists. Her words stayed with him longer than he wanted. Nathan was not a cruel man. He was simply guarded. After Eleanor's death, many people had encouraged him to marry again. Some suggested widows from town. Others introduced him to women who wanted a comfortable ranch life. Nathan always refused. He couldn't understand how someone could simply move on. To him, loving another woman felt like turning his back on the memory of the wife he had buried. But Clara was different. She never asked him to forget. She only reminded him that he was still alive. And that frightened him. Meanwhile, Clara quickly became the subject of conversation in Red Creek. When she visited town for supplies, people noticed. The women admired her kindness. The men noticed everything else. She was beautiful in a way that was impossible to ignore. Her gentle smile, graceful manners, and quiet confidence made her stand out among everyone she met. Within days, several men began finding excuses to visit Nathan's ranch. Thomas Walker, the owner of the local general store, brought extra supplies and offered Clara a ride into town. Samuel Carter, a wealthy landowner, sent flowers and expensive chocolates. Even young Daniel Reed, the town's schoolteacher, began spending afternoons talking with her. Nathan noticed every single one. He told himself he didn't care. But every time another man made Clara laugh, something uncomfortable tightened in his chest. One evening, Nathan and Clara stood outside the barn watching the sunset. "You've got a lot of admirers," Nathan said. Clara glanced at him. "Do I?" He gave a small laugh. "You know you do." She looked toward the distant hills. "They are kind men. Most of them are hoping to marry you." She smiled faintly. "Maybe." Nathan studied her. "You don't seem interested." Clara was quiet for a moment. "Interest isn't the same as love." The answer surprised him. Nathan crossed his arms. "You could have an easier life. Someone with money. Someone who can give you things." Clara turned toward him. "And what do you think I want?" Nathan looked away. "I don't know." She stepped closer. "I want someone who sees me." The word struck deeper than she intended. Nathan had spent years believing his scars made him unworthy of love. He had convinced himself that a lonely life was the price he had to pay for the past. But Clara seemed to look beyond those scars. And that made him uncomfortable. Because the more time he spent with her, the harder it became to pretend he felt nothing. One night, after dinner, Lily sat beside Nathan near the fireplace. "Uncle Nathan." "Do you like Clara?" He nearly dropped the cup in his hand. "She's a nice person." Lily rolled her eyes the way only children could. "That's not what I asked." Nathan looked at the fire. "People like Clara don't stay forever." Lily frowned. "Why not?" He didn't answer. Because deep down, Nathan was afraid of the truth. Clara wasn't leaving because she had to. She was leaving because eventually she would realize she deserved someone who wasn't broken. Someone younger. Someone happier. Someone who could give her a future. Not a man still living in the shadow of yesterday. But Clara had a secret of her own. A reason she had come west. A reason she had chosen a quiet ranch instead of a comfortable life. And soon, Nathan would discover that the woman everyone wanted was carrying wounds just as deep as his own. Because Clara Bennett had not arrived at his ranch by accident. She had come looking for a place where hearts could heal. And somehow, she had found his. For several weeks, Nathan Hale allowed himself to believe that life at the ranch had found a peaceful rhythm. The mornings were still filled with hard work. The field still needed tending, the horses still needed care, and the Wyoming wind still carried the same endless song across the plains. But something had changed. There was laughter again. Lily laughed more than she had in years. Mrs. Dawson smiled whenever she visited. Even the old wooden house seemed warmer with Clara inside it. Nathan noticed every little thing. The way Clara hummed while preparing meals. The way she listened to Lily's stories as if every word mattered. The way she always saved the last piece of bread for someone else. And that was exactly why Nathan became afraid. He was beginning to care. Not as a friend. Not as a temporary companion. Something deeper was growing inside him, something he had promised himself he would never feel again. Love. Nathan fought it every day. He reminded himself that Clara was too young for him. That she deserved a man without scars. A man who could offer her excitement and dreams instead of a ranch filled with memories. But his heart did not listen to reason. Then, one cold morning, everything changed. A rider arrived at the ranch carrying a sealed envelope. Nathan was outside repairing a fence when he saw the stranger approaching. "Mr. Hale." Nathan walked forward. "Yes." The rider removed his hat. "Letter for Miss Clara Bennett." Nathan looked toward the house. "She's inside." Clara appeared moments later. The moment she saw the envelope, the color drained from her face. Nathan noticed. "Everything all right?" Clara forced a smile. "Yes." But it wasn't convincing. She accepted the letter with trembling hands and thanked the writer before returning inside. Nathan watched her carefully. He had spent years reading the land, animals, and weather. He knew when something was wrong. And something was definitely wrong. That evening, Clara barely touched her dinner. Lily noticed immediately. "Are you sad?" Clara smiled gently. "No, sweetheart. Your eyes look sad." Nathan looked down at his plate. Children often saw what adults tried to hide. Later that night, Nathan found Clara sitting alone on the porch, holding the letter. The moonlight reflected off the paper in her hands. "Bad news?" he asked. She looked up. For a moment, Nathan thought she might pretend everything was fine. Instead, she sighed. "I suppose it was only a matter of time." Nathan sat beside her. "You don't have to tell me anything." "I know." She looked out across the dark fields. "But I want to." The silence between them grew. Then Clara began her story. Before coming west, she had lived in Boston. Her family had been respected, and she had grown up surrounded by comfort. She had been engaged to a wealthy businessman named Charles Whitmore. Everyone thought she had found the perfect future. But Clara had discovered the truth. Charles cared about appearances, money, and reputation. Not people. She had watched him mistreat servants, manipulate business partners, and humiliate those who could not defend themselves. When I questioned him, Clara said quietly, "He told me that kindness was a weakness." Nathan's jaw tightened. "And you left?" She nodded. "I ended the engagement." Nathan looked at her. "Most people would have stayed for the money." "Maybe." She folded the letter. "But I couldn't spend my life beside someone who made my heart smaller." Nathan understood that feeling. Better than anyone. Clara continued. "My family considered it a disgrace. They believed I had ruined my future. So you came west. I needed somewhere I could start again." Nathan looked toward the ranch. "And you found this place?" Clara smiled faintly. "I found people who reminded me that a person's worth isn't measured by wealth." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Nathan asked the question he had been avoiding. "Does he know where you are?" Clara looked away. The answer came before she spoke. "Yes." The next day, Red Creek was filled with rumors. A stranger had arrived in town. A wealthy man wearing an expensive coat and riding a fine black horse. Charles Whitmore. Nathan saw him outside the general store. The man looked exactly like the kind of person Clara had described. Polished. Confident. Cold. By afternoon, the rumors reached the ranch. Some people whispered that Clara had abandoned her fiancé. Others said she had run away because she wanted a richer life. Nathan hated the way people spoke about her. They didn't know her. They didn't know what she had sacrificed. They only saw a beautiful woman with a mysterious past and created their own stories. That evening, Nathan found Clara standing near the barn. "You should have told me." She looked at him. "Would it have changed how you saw me?" Nathan hesitated. "No." "Then why does it matter?" Because he was scared. Because he knew now that losing her would hurt. Because the thought of Charles taking her away felt unbearable. But Nathan couldn't say any of that. Instead, he said the only thing he could. "You deserve someone who can protect you from people like him." Clara studied him. "I don't need someone to save me, Nathan." Her voice softened. "I need someone who believes me." Those words stayed with him. The next morning, Charles Whitmore arrived at the ranch. He stepped down from his horse wearing a confident smile. "Miss Bennet." Clara froze. Nathan moved beside her. Not behind her. Beside her. Charles looked at him with amusement. "And who might you be?" Nathan's expression hardened. "Nathan Hale." Charles smiled. "I see." He glanced between them. "So this is where you've been hiding." Clara lifted her chin. "I wasn't hiding." Charles laughed quietly. "We both know why you ran." Nathan stepped forward. "Choose your words carefully." Charles looked surprised. Because everyone in town knew Nathan Hale as a quiet man. A man who avoided conflict. But for the first time in years, Nathan wasn't fighting for himself. He was fighting for someone else. And Clara realized something. The lonely rancher who believed his heart was too damaged to love again had just taken the first step toward healing. Because sometimes the person who saves your heart is not the one who needs rescuing. Sometimes they are the one who reminds you that your heart was never truly broken. The arrival of Charles Whitmore changed the atmosphere around Nathan's ranch. For weeks, the property had been filled with peace. The sound of Clara's laughter, Lily's questions, and the simple routines of ranch life had made the old house feel alive again. But now, tension hung in the air like an approaching storm. Charles stayed in Red Creek, renting a room at the local hotel and making sure everyone knew he had come for Clara. He told people he was there to bring his future wife home. But Nathan noticed something different. Whenever Charles spoke about Clara, he never said her name with love. He spoke of her like she was something he owned. And that angered Nathan more than he wanted to admit. For days, Nathan watched as Clara tried to remain calm. She continued helping Lily with her lessons. She continued preparing meals. She continued smiling. But Nathan saw the truth. She was afraid. Not of Charles himself. But of what his return might destroy. One evening, Nathan found Clara sitting alone near the barn, staring at the sunset. "You should rest," he said. She looked back at him. "You always say that when you're worried." Nathan frowned. "I'm not worried." Clara smiled slightly. "You are a terrible liar." For the first time in days, Nathan almost smiled. Almost. He leaned against the wooden fence. "What happens now?" Clara looked down at her hands. "I don't know." Nathan was surprised. "You left everything behind. You came all the way here. Surely you had a plan." "I did." "What was it?" She looked toward the distant mountains. "To disappear." Nathan studied her. "You don't seem like someone who runs away." "I wasn't running away from him." Her voice became softer. "I was running toward myself." Those words stayed with Nathan. He understood them. Because after Eleanor died, he had done the same thing. He had not left town. He had not traveled away. But he had disappeared inside himself. The next day, Charles visited the ranch again. This time, he came with a proposal. "I believe we've wasted enough time," he said to Clara. Nathan stood nearby, his expression unreadable. Charles continued. "Come back east with me. Your reputation can be repaired. People will forget this foolish adventure." Clara stared at him. "My life is not a mistake you get to correct." Charles's smile faded. "You don't understand what you're giving up." "No." She looked him directly in the eyes. "You don't understand what I already gave up." Nathan felt something change as he heard those words. Clara was not the frightened woman Charles expected to find. She was stronger than anyone realized. Charles eventually left, but before riding away, he looked at Nathan. "You think you can give her a better life?" Nathan said nothing. "You are a rancher with nothing but land and memories." The word struck deeper than Charles knew. Because Nathan had told himself the same thing for years. After Charles left, Nathan became distant. Too distant. He worked longer hours. He avoided being alone with Clara. And Clara noticed. One night, she found him repairing a fence long after dark. "You're avoiding me." Nathan kept working. "No." "Yes." The certainty in her voice made him stop. He looked at her. "Clara." "Why?" Nathan lowered his eyes. Because he couldn't tell her the truth. He couldn't tell her that every moment with her made him want something he was afraid to lose. He couldn't tell her that he dreamed about a future he believed he didn't deserve. Finally, he said. "Because you deserve better." Clara stared at him. "Better than what?" Nathan looked away. "Better than this." He gestured toward the ranch. "This life." She shook her head. "You still don't understand." "Understand what?" "That I never wanted a mansion." Her voice trembled slightly. "I never wanted expensive dresses or a wealthy husband." She stepped closer. "I wanted kindness. Respect. A place where I could breathe." Nathan remained silent. Clara looked hurt. "And I thought maybe you were that place." The words hit him harder than any wound. But instead of reaching for her, Nathan stepped back. Because fear was stronger than hope. "I can't promise you forever." Clara's eyes filled with sadness. "I never asked you to." The next morning, Clara made a decision. She would leave. Not because she wanted to. Because staying where she was not wanted would hurt more. She packed her small bag quietly. Lily discovered her first. "You're leaving." Clara knelt beside the little girl. "Only for a while." "But why?" Clara forced a smile. "Sometimes people need time to understand what they truly want." Lily looked toward Nathan, who stood silently in the doorway. She understood more than any child should. "You should tell him." Clara looked confused. "Tell him what?" Lily whispered. "That you love him." Clara's expression softened. But some hearts are scared to be loved. The stagecoach arrived the following morning. Nathan watched from the porch as Clara carried her bag outside. Every part of him wanted to stop her. Every part of him wanted to tell her she belonged there. But the old fear returned. The fear of losing someone again. The fear of failing her. The fear that his heart was too damaged to give anyone happiness. Clara stopped before climbing into the coach. She looked at him one last time. "I hope you find peace, Nathan." He swallowed. "And I hope you find happiness." Her smile was gentle but painful. "I already did." Then she stepped into the coach. As the horses began moving, Nathan remained frozen. He watched the woman who had brought warmth back into his life disappear down the dusty road. And for the first time in 5 years, Nathan realized something terrifying. Being alone had never been his greatest fear. His greatest fear was finding something worth living for. And letting it leave. The ranch had never felt so empty. Nathan Hale had known silence before. For 5 years, silence had been his companion. It had followed him through empty rooms, quiet dinners, and long nights beside the fireplace. He had convinced himself that he understood loneliness. But this was different. Before Clara left, the silence had been something he accepted. After Clara left, it felt like something had been taken from him. Every corner of the ranch carried a reminder of her. The kitchen where she baked bread in the mornings. The chair where she sat helping Lily read. The porch where she watched sunsets beside him. Nathan hated that he noticed these things. He hated that he missed them. Most of all, he hated that he had been the one who let her go. Days passed. Then weeks. Nathan returned to his old routine. Wake before sunrise. Work until dark. Eat alone. Sleep. But something was missing. The ranch was still standing. The animals were still cared for. The fields still grew. Yet the place no longer felt like home. One evening, Lily found Nathan sitting alone outside the barn. She carried a small wooden horse she had carved herself. "Uncle Nathan." He looked up. "Yeah. Why did Clara leave?" Nathan looked away. "She needed to." Lily frowned. "No, she didn't." Nathan sighed. "Sometimes people need to go where they belong." The little girl sat beside him. But what if she belonged here? Nathan froze. Children had a way of asking the questions adults spent years avoiding. "Lily." She held the wooden horse tightly. "After Mama died, you told me that losing someone doesn't mean you stop loving them." Nathan looked at her. "That's true. Then why did you stop yourself from loving Clara?" The question struck him like a bullet. Nathan opened his mouth to answer. But nothing came out. Because Lily was right. He had spent years protecting his heart from pain. But in doing so, he had also protected himself from happiness. That night, Nathan barely slept. He walked through the house, seeing Clara everywhere. He remembered the first day she arrived. The way she rescued the calf. The way she smiled at Lily. The way she looked at him and saw something he thought no one could see. A good man. Not a broken one. By morning, Nathan knew. He could lose her forever. Or he could finally be brave. Before sunrise, Nathan saddled Ranger. Lily ran outside when she heard the horse. "Where are you going?" Nathan tightened the saddle straps. "To fix something I should have fixed a long time ago." Her eyes widened. "You're going after her?" Nathan nodded. For the first time in years, there was no hesitation in his voice. "Yes." The road to the next town was long. The stagecoach had already left, and Nathan knew every minute mattered. The wind cut against his face as Ranger raced across the open plains. Nathan thought about everything he should have said. He should have told Clara that she made the house feel alive again. That hearing her laugh was the best part of his day. That when she left, she didn't just leave the ranch. She took the future he had been too afraid to imagine. Hours later, Nathan saw the stagecoach tracks leading toward the next settlement. He pushed Ranger harder. Finally, near a small bridge outside town, he saw it. The stagecoach. Nathan rode ahead and raised his hand. The driver pulled the horses to a stop. Passengers looked out in surprise. Then Clara stepped down. For a moment, neither of them spoke. She looked tired. But when she saw Nathan, something changed in her eyes. "Nathan?" He climbed down from his horse. He had planned a speech. 100 different words. But standing in front of her, all he could say was the truth. I was wrong. Clara said nothing. Nathan took a breath. I thought loving someone again meant forgetting Eleanor. Her expression softened. It doesn't. He nodded. I know that now. The wind moved between them. I spent years thinking my heart was broken because I lost her. He looked at Clara. But the truth is, I was broken because I stopped living. A tear formed in Clara's eyes. Nathan continued. You came into my life and you didn't try to replace anyone. You didn't ask me to forget my past. His voice became quieter. You just reminded me I still had a future. Clara looked down. Nathan. I was afraid. He admitted the words he had never spoken. Afraid that I wasn't enough. Afraid that I would lose someone I loved again. He stepped closer. But losing you taught me something. What? That being without you hurts more than the risk of loving you. For a long moment, Clara simply looked at him. Then she whispered. Do you know why I stayed at your ranch? Nathan shook his head. She smiled sadly. Because everyone saw a lonely rancher who had lost too much. Her voice trembled. But I saw someone who still had kindness inside him. Nathan lowered his eyes. I told you once I thought you were going to break a lot of hearts. Clara smiled through her tears. And I told you I only wanted to mend yours. Nathan finally allowed himself to smile. I don't know if my heart is completely healed. Clara stepped closer. Neither is mine. She placed her hand in his. Maybe hearts aren't meant to be perfect. Nathan looked at her. Maybe they just need someone willing to stay. The stagecoach driver cleared his throat awkwardly. Are we leaving, or should I give you two another hour? For the first time in years, Nathan laughed. A real laugh. The kind Clara had been trying to bring back all along. They returned to the ranch together. Not because Clara needed saving. Not because Nathan needed someone to complete him. But because two people who had both known loss had finally found someone willing to understand their scars. And sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about finding someone who makes you forget the past. They're about finding someone who helps you believe in the future. The day Nathan Hale brought Clara Bennett back to the ranch was a day the people of Red Creek never forgot. For weeks, everyone had watched Nathan become the man he had been before Clara arrived, quiet, distant, and buried beneath his own thoughts. They had seen the light disappear from the ranch once again. So when Nathan rode into town beside Clara, with a smile on his face and hope in his eyes, people knew something had changed. The lonely rancher who had spent years avoiding happiness had finally chosen it. Lily was waiting at the front gate. The moment she saw Clara, she ran across the yard. You came back. Clara dropped her bag and hugged the little girl tightly. I did. Lily looked up at Nathan. Did you finally tell her? Nathan smiled. Yes. The little girl nodded proudly. I knew you would. From that day forward, the ranch became different. Not overnight. Not magically. Healing never worked that way. But slowly, day by day, the house that had once been filled with grief became filled with life again. Clara planted new flowers beside Eleanor's old garden. When Nathan saw them, he worried she was trying to change something that belonged to his late wife. But Clara shook her head. I'm not replacing what was here. She touched the old flowers gently. I'm helping it continue. Nathan understood then. Love was not about erasing the past. It was about making room for the future. Over the next year, the ranch became known throughout the valley. Not because Nathan owned the largest land. Not because he had the most cattle. But because his home became a place where people were welcomed. Travelers passing through were offered food. Neighbors in trouble found help. Children without families found kindness. Clara had always believed that a home was more than walls and a roof. It was a place where people felt they belonged. And Nathan finally understood what she meant. One winter evening, as snow covered the fields, Nathan sat beside the fireplace watching Clara read a story to Lily. The scene felt impossible. Years ago, he had believed happiness like this was something that belonged to other people. Not him. He had thought his best days were behind him. But there he was. A warm fire. A loving family. A woman beside him who had seen every reason he had to close his heart and had loved him anyway. Later that night, Nathan and Clara stood outside on the porch watching the stars. I used to think loving again meant betraying Eleanor, Nathan admitted. Clara looked at him. And now? Nathan smiled softly. Now I think Eleanor would have wanted me to live. Clara squeezed his hand. She sounds like she was a wonderful woman. She was. Nathan looked toward the garden. And I think she would have liked you. Clara smiled. I think I would have liked her too. Years passed. The people of Red Creek watched Nathan and Clara grow older together. They saw a once lonely man become the heart of the community. They saw Clara continue doing what she had always done, bringing warmth wherever she went. One afternoon, a young traveler visiting the ranch asked Nathan a question. Sir, is it true that when Mrs. Hale arrived, every man in town wanted to marry her? Nathan laughed. That sounds about right. The young man smiled. She must have broken a lot of hearts. Nathan looked across the yard where Clara was teaching children how to plant flowers. His expression softened. No. The traveler looked confused. No. Nathan shook his head. She didn't break hearts. He watched Clara smile. She spent her whole life mending them. The traveler nodded. Even yours? Nathan looked down at his hands, the same hands that had worked the land, buried the past, and built a new life. Especially mine. That evening, Nathan and Clara sat together beneath the old oak tree overlooking the ranch. The same place where Nathan had once believed he would spend the rest of his life alone. Clara rested her head on his shoulder. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if that wagon wheel hadn't broken? Nathan smiled. All the time. And? He looked at her. I think I would have spent the rest of my life wondering what I was missing. Clara smiled. And now? Nathan looked toward the glowing sunset over Wyoming. Now I know. The wind moved gently across the fields. The horses grazed peacefully. The house behind them was filled with warmth and laughter. Nathan Hale had once believed his heart was something damaged beyond repair. But Clara had shown him the truth. Some hearts are not broken. They are simply waiting for the right person to remind them how to beat again. And in the quiet beauty of the Wyoming frontier, two wounded souls found something greater than love. They found a home. The end.